Life is complex. So is our mental health. It cannot be understood by diagnosis alone. Our philosophy is treat the person, not the mental illness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Humanizing Mental Health. I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
And I'm Trent Akers.
Today, we're going to be exploring the humans behind the mic. We're going to do this in a two-part episode. With our first part, we're going to explore my co-host Trent Akers, his life experience and what has kind of molded and shaped him to be the person he is today.
Oh, well, thank you, Jeremy. Well, hello, everybody. I know this is probably, as you're listening to this, if you're listening to this in order, this will be our second episode. And for those of you that have joined in, I just want to say hello. My name, of course, is Trenton, or I usually go by Trent Akers. And let me start off with a little bit of biographical information about myself. I was born in the year 1987. For those music fans, which I am, that was the year that the YouTube album Rattle and Hum came out. And I can see Jeremy's perplexed look as he's looking at me.
I was thinking you were going to say Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction.
No.
What was that, 87 though? I'm not even sure.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. No, I don't mind a little Guns N' Roses or a little Axl Rose, but no, actually, no, I'm a big U2 fan. Well, there's a little bit.
And for a second, I thought you said YouTube, and I was like, "Wait a minute, there was no YouTube in 1987."
I don't know. I think if we're going back to that, I think you could have had YouTube, but I think it would have just been camcorder.
Yeah.
So just to give a little, that puts me at 34 years old, and I'm a lifelong resident of Medicine, Alberta. For those of you that know anything about Canada, I mean, Alberta is sort of the prairie provinces, as one person has kind of described southern Alberta, which Medicine is in. It's sort of like the Texas of Canada, which can be good and bad things depending upon the way you look at it. We're a big oil field community, and we can also be a little bit conservative, which has some good things and has some other things that people may or may not go for. But I don't know. I've loved Medicine. It's a great place to grow up. I have my father was an electrician for 40 years. My mother was a nurse. I have one older brother than me, my brother Sheldon. He's actually 18 months older than me. And one of the things, I mean, if you're literally sitting here looking at me, that's actually rather apparent. But for those of you that are just listening to me, one of the main things that has formed a lot of who I am is I have a disability known as cerebral palsy. Now, what that is that's kind of a blanket condition. And basically what it is it's a movement disorder. And I do a lot of talks with kids, and I explain what cerebral palsy is, kind of like a puppet. I don't know if anybody has watched Pinocchio lately. Like you think of Pinocchio with his strings. Some strings are with me, with my cerebral palsy. Some strings are tight, some strings are loose, and some strings are somewhere in the middle. Now, because of that, I use an electric wheelchair to get around, and as you'll notice, sometimes through probably some of our episodes, I tend to get a little bit short of breath. That's because when I was initially born, I was actually born about 28 weeks premature. Now, for those of you that may be medical professionals, that's pretty much the cutoff for when a lot of people can actually be viable first out of the womb. Anything before that, your chances of survival outside of the womb actually decrease quite dramatically. And for me in particular, my lungs were underdeveloped, and because I had underdeveloped lungs, I had something happen to me which is called a hypoxic event. Now, that's a scientific term, normally not a mental health term that we talk about on this show. A hypoxic event basically means a specific large loss of oxygen. So basically, when I was born, I didn't breathe. So because of that, a lot of the key neurons are parts of the brain that control muscle movement and muscle smoothness. Those were irreparably damaged. Now, basically what that means is that I can still control, move my body. It's just not as smooth as the average ambulatory person. And it's almost quite similar to having a stroke. Now, because of that, because I was born so premature, my life. Oh, sorry.
And yeah, just a quick question. So you're talking about in that gestation period that you were 28 weeks in gestation when you were born. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which of course most people consider that internal gestation to be 40 weeks is that kind of typical gestation. So that's really significant.
Yeah, and and as you and I were like just watching something just right before the show here, where it talked about trauma. I mean, and I've talked about with my family and specifically with my mother, like we were talking about the trauma of birth and really how my birth for her was traumatic and how that shaped our relationship.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because it becomes a reciprocal thing. That is to say, the distress that she experiences then is felt within the context of this mother-child interaction. Oh. And it's not like that's somebody's fault. I mean, that would be very, very normal for a mom to be distressed in that situation.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, right there, I mean, because of my birth and the traumatic nature of that birth, that disruption happened. And then, of course, you had the medical apparatus that just kind of came up around me and like really, really separated her and I on that most fundamental level, because she talks about going into the ICU at those moments when you go in and you visit a baby. And I mean, it's right behind glass. And she said, like, you're surrounded by all of these traumatized parents. She said, you go straight to your child, you don't look at anybody else, and you kind of try to have those moments of connection. And I mean, if any of you, because I was so premature, I actually ended up spending quite a bit of time in an incubator.
Yeah, in fact, I can link up with your experience. One of my nieces was also born very premature, like about 16 weeks early, and her dad's wedding ring would fit all the way up her hand, all the way to her shoulder. And so that position around what does this look like, and what are the intense pressures that happen for the family at that time?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking around or my living room where we normally record, and I actually have my baby book around here. But if you actually, I'm trying to think where it is. Like thinking that you're just a regular audience that I talk to, but I don't know. Maybe we'll throw up some pictures online, or not. Well, we'll see what happens.
Sure, but there's something I imagine. Like my niece, they had this little stuffed animal that they put in there as a something of perspective. And now you see the stuffed animal and you go, oh, no way that she was that little. I imagine you have some things that are similar to that.
Oh yeah, actually, and this will be a good visual for people. So when my grandma, when she was alive, when she actually knit a cap for me, I don't know if any of you out there eat Christmas oranges. Like, do you know how small a Christmas orange is? So that was about the approximate size of my head. And so if any of you are actually looking at your wrist, if you actually just want to pull out your hand right now, so my head would fit in the palm of your hand and about halfway down your forearm. So, like just a little bit below where your elbow would be, or a little bit above, I should say, about halfway. That is approximately how long I was. So that was my approximate size. And I was so premature to the point that literally when all of your body parts are coming up together, your ears actually move from the I believe it's the lower part of your jaw, and eventually as you mature and gestate, they'll actually move up into place. My ears were actually low, like, the old song, do your ears hang low? My ears were literally hanging low because they hadn't moved up into place yet.
Wow. And I had no idea we had this kind of shared experience. Obviously, for you, it was your own life. And for me, it was my niece. You talk about your grandma making you clothes. I remember this. Here's this little baby, and there's no clothes that are made that small. And so my mom, who would have been the grandma, then used doll clothes as a pattern to create these clothes for this baby. So it's just interesting, these ways in which our life connects.
And that, well, and there again too, I mean, like when you talk about doll clothes, I mean, there again, a doll for a child, so everything gets really shrunk down, and the fact that you almost wonder to yourself too, how many of us actually have shared experiences, and how, if we take the time to get to know each other, how we can really create sort of that understanding, which of course then too is sort of the ethos of this podcast, which is really humanizing mental health, finding those shared experiences.
Because we will find wellness and we'll do it together.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, as you go on and as you probably listen to more of our episodes, I think that's going to be one of the main themes is, coming together and, of course, finding that connection, but really healing through community. And that's, I mean, I think that, you and I have talked about this before, but that's really how healing really comes together. And what we want to do with this podcast is to create that community, even if it's just over voice. Yeah.
So you're in this space in which you talk about your very first foundations, which your foundations are a traumatic birth. And this, what was the word you used? Was it an apnea event?
Hypoxic.
There you go.
Yeah, well, I mean, like my mother, actually last weekend, my mother and I were talking about this, and what it was, because is what they would do is they had me on oxygen, and then they would take me off and try and let me breathe. So I'd be gasping for air, and then they have to put me back on again. Take me off, put me back on, take me, and so normally, like when a child comes into the world, like you think of like the first cry, the first breath, and then sort of that. And for those of you that know anything about the long nerve that really connects the longest nerve in the body that connects really the brain, the heart, and everything else, the vagus nerve, the one thing that it's really controlled by and really activated by is breath. I mean, for those of you that have ever gone into therapy or even done yoga, like what is the one thing that you do to calm yourself down is to breathe. And that was the one thing that I couldn't do. So I kind of came into the world, not knowing how to calm myself down,
regulate, and beyond that, to be able to find survival and life, because this is this foundation of need for oxygen for life.
No, absolutely.
You came into life fighting, and actually you never stopped.
I will agree. And, the fact that you say that, because that's, well, my pediatrician at the time, Dr. Folston, Charlotte Folston, who was a wonderful pediatrician. She's now retired, but she said to my mother, she said, yep, he's a fighter. He survived. And I mean, like, and that really, that whole tone of fighting, like whether it be, and as we talk on, my God, it's taken so many different forms. So whether it was for me for the fight for breath, the fight from my parents when it comes to fight for services, and the fight to be recognized as actual competent parents, and I'll come back to that in a moment, because I think that would be the next point to come to, and then sort of the fight for recognition by peers, whether they be children or whether they be then soon on key professionals in my field that I'm now in as a clinical social worker. That is that's sort of been the undertone. Yeah.
In fact, one of the things that really stands out to me as you talk about that story is the fight hasn't been in some way to win against someone. It hasn't been somehow to beat someone else or to compete with someone else and have a loser and a winner. In fact, knowing you well, you've always been interested in other people's wellness. You've never stepped on someone to elevate yourself. It's just been a fight to be part of. If I said that right.
Yeah, well, I think that I think definitely think that that's a key point because well, let's back things up to like the year that I was born, 1987, and let's put that back into a bit of context. So, you know, I mean, if we're looking at this from 2021 or 2022, depending, I guess it would be 2021. I don't want to put it as in 2022 anytime soon. But you have to remember that back in 1987, there was still a lot of institutions that were open. My mother, when I went to school, she had to fight for school integration for me. So like there was schools for persons with disabilities, but it was about really integrating me into a regular classroom and allowing me to be a part of that. And then too, there was also like just having being able to go living in a small community like Medicine Hat is, and I mean it's gotten it's the accessibility has grown leaps and bounds, but sometimes too it's just about at those times being able to step outside your door and like have things that we all take for granted now, like whether it be accessible doors or even just having
sidewalks.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, good. Well, what? I've got to go 5 blocks away to be able to get a spot that has a cut point in the sidewalk to let a wheelchair up. Like, come on, people.
And that sort of fight. So and the thing is too, with that fight, then I also too, due to the nature of my disability and what I am classified as is an incomplete quadriplegic, which means that my cerebral palsy impacts every part of my body. So I need to, it's kind of a fight, but it's more of a negotiation because I can't go in direct opposition to other people. Maybe I'm going to back that up a little bit because I tend to talk with my hands. But I also rely on other people as well to get my needs met. So it's always been sort of a tenuous negotiation between how much do I cajole and request versus if I tick you off, are you going to assist me? So you always have sort of that kind of idea in the back of your head as a person with a disability, whether you're dealing with an individual one-on-one or whether you're dealing with an organization.
Yeah, it means that there's a constant measuring of power. Mm-hmm. Like a constant position of recognizing that there's potential imbalance in power that maybe even the other party doesn't even realize is there.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, here's the thing, too. I mean, even when it comes to parents, I mean, like, parents always hold a level of power over children. But, and just in terms of the parental role.
Mm-hmm. In fact, they need to. That's essential.
Oh, yeah.
And the use of power is really the essential picture. And you're right. There's this innate power.
Yeah, and the thing is with me and like what it's always been so interesting is that with my family, because I've always had that level of dependence, I shouldn't say dependence, of physical need. I wanted to clarify that because I'm able to
a whole bunch of things you do on your own.
Yeah. When you're picturing an incomplete quadriplegic, like once I'm up in my chair, I'm mobile, I'm fine. But it's when I'm outside of my chair and in an environment that really isn't suited to me, that's when my true
the power shifts.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, your chair holds power. I mean, that power is electricity. But that electricity power gives you the mobility that allows that independence. So for sure, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like we're kind of wandering all over the place, but yeah.
Well, no, but for sure, that totally makes sense. So we're talking about this kind of imbalance in power. You're talking about parenting. You're talking about kind of your life experience and the process of how a lot of other people wouldn't even think about some of the things that are just critical in your life. Something as simple as a sidewalk that allows you to access it.
Yeah, which kind of brings me into my favorite quote from the Marvel Universe, which I think I've used this a few... Oh, pardon me, I had a Coke before the recording session here, so if I accidentally belched a little bit, I apologize. Hopefully the smell doesn't carry with the soundtrack.
Nice.
But one thing that one of my favorite quotes from the Marvel Universe, even though Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters, now with great power comes great responsibility. It's one of my favorite scenes is from Captain America: Winter Soldier, where you see Steve and then you see Sam Wilson, and they're doing laps around the National Mall, around that wonderful pool that they have. And I mean, you'll see Steve. He comes up and he laps them over and over again, and that kind of becomes an ethos for their or a metaphor for their relationship. And one time in the movie, Sam basically says, "I do the same thing he does, just slower," which really, for me, that sort of encapsulates what it means to have a physical disability at my level, which is we can do a lot of the same things that everyone else can do. I mean, like there will always be certain things that, that I'll never be able to do. I'm not going to be able to tie my own shoes, I don't know, put on my own socks, but there's a lot of other things that I do. It just takes me a lot more time, and it's always the planning and it's the will to keep going and to try that just kind of has formed my character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the theme that we were on was this notion of I started out in life fighting for breath and I never stopped fighting. It wasn't just you. Like you said, it was your tribe as well, that your parents fought for you. And so forth.
Yeah. And, and I really, I won the lottery in terms of my parents, maybe not so much with the genetics, with the receding hairline, which then I always get all the Professor X jokes. But no, like I said, my mother was a nurse. My father was an electrician, so my mother intimately knew care very, very well. My grandmother, her mother was a nurse, and then my grandfather had also worked in institutions actually caring for persons with disabilities. So that was well grounded in there. So my mother knew all the things that were kind of necessary for that. And my father, and this was sort of the division of labor, as it were, as we grew up. My father wasn't well versed in care. He was an electrician and sort of a jack of all trades. So basically anything that was sort of necessary to be built, he did it. Like he would build standers, walkers, ramps, and because of his technical ingenuity, I was able to go out and do things that maybe a lot of other people with disabilities weren't able to do. Like they made sure whenever they were sort of the ethos of my disability was. And I think that this is something that I've internalized, which is really important, is that they didn't look at my disability as a hindrance. Rather, they looked at it, as something to be accommodated, and they didn't see it as me. Like my mother had always talked about when they were ever mad, they weren't mad, unless I did something like all children do. If there was ever an issue, with my disability, it wasn't, they weren't mad at me. They didn't see the disability as me. They were mad at cerebral palsy, or CP. Yeah. And then I also had I have a brother. He's 18 months older than me. And the most interesting thing is he has ADHD. So it was kind of, he would get back at me or I would say something to him verbally, and he would get back at me physically. And my brother, while I wasn't able to do all of the physical things, my brother sort of brought the light, and as Jeremy will know, like being intimately aware with ADHD, brought the energy into the family that kind of kept us all sort of going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Let me see. So, I feel like I'm just talking ad nauseum. I'm waiting for you.
Oh no, that's all good.
Yeah.
That position around, and I keep coming back to this, but it really does seem to be that thread, that fighting for yourself and fighting for that life. And you talk about in school that during that period of time, mainstreaming wasn't necessarily the normal.
Oh yeah. No, that's a good point. Actually, my mother did a lot of advocating. Actually, my mother got a very interesting nickname from one of the school principals. She was called the Barracuda. I hear this is where we need the needle drop. Ooh, Barracuda.
Right.
But that was because it was whether or not if I was getting bullied, because I got bullied by teachers. My brother got bullied by teachers, or bullied by other students. Particularly my grade 2. For me, it was my grade 2 teacher. She would blame things on me in terms of, we can't have a piano in the room because Trent will run into it with his chair. We can't have a Christmas tree, and basically she refused to teach me because of that. And then just kind of grade 1 teacher, not grade 2. And then by the time that I got to grade 2, I basically had to be held back because I didn't have the knowledge. And I had a wonderful grade 2 teacher that helped out through there. And with my brother, having ADHD, he had a level of energy and that a lot of teachers weren't initially able to accommodate. So with him, he was, they did various things with him, which are his to tell. But so my mother would always kind of have to go in and say, no, you can't do that with my kids, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. And so from her, actually, we even have news clippings of her actually fighting for school integration, going to meetings of parents with the handicap. And she, even though she was a nurse, she was a great advocate and sort of set my ethos for wanting to be a social worker, because she was the one that kind of set all of that in motion. And actually, Lee Sheward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Lee Sheward. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So for those of you out there, Lee is an individual that worked with the University of Calgary in their bachelor's degree of social work, and is kind of a matriarch for the city. There's just almost every student that have been through that program would have had mentorship from her.
Yeah, and when actually Lee was starting out her career, 'cause she started out helping out with parents with handicap. But yeah, and as a young social worker, she, first interacted with my mom and all of those young parents and kind of galvanized that group and kind of pushed them forward in terms of this social action. So
tell me then, in terms of your career path, so you complete high school,
mm-hmm.
and did you know that you wanted to become a social worker right away?
No, actually, initially I wanted to go into psychology, and I wanted to do that ever since I was a child. I had met this young psychologist at the time, Stephen, and he had put me on the path, because I was rather taken with him. And for the longest time, even in my aptitude test, when it came up with social work, I was like, nah, don't want to do that. Yeah, and then so it started out in psychology, and I don't know, I enjoyed the psychology courses, but as I started taking anthropology, religious studies, sociology, I was like, I like psychology, but I want a broader base. I want something a little bit more unique. And then actually, I ended up, I don't know if you know Linda Fair.
Yeah, very much so. Linda Fair is someone that is connected to the Lethbridge campus of University of Calgary.
Yeah.
Social work.
Yeah. So with her, like literally, I was in there one day. I was literally paying our because where their office used to be. If any of you ever go to the U of L campus, I forget what the building is called now, but where you go to pay your fees, that used to be where the U of C office was.
Right by the registrar.
Yeah, right by the. Thank you. I forgot that word. Yeah, so I'm going and I'm paying by the registrar, and I go in there, and then here's Linda, and like where she was just. I think she was just right outside the doors or something, and we ended up having a conversation. This was at noon, and then we ended up talking for like an hour and a half. Thank goodness I didn't end up having a class. And she looks at me, she goes, "You really need to join the social work program." She says, you're so well versed. And I said to her, I'd love to, and afterwards I'm like, I'd love to, but due to my physical disability and all the care that I have, I'm like, I can't do 5 classes a semester. I can't, because at the time, I'd only ever taken 3, maybe 4, and she's like, "Well, we do have a program in Medicine Hat." And, at the time, I was like, "Oh, well, I just left Medicine Hat."
I wanted to get out of that town.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I'm not going back to that town.
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, well, sure, whatever. And I mean, my first few years at the U of L were a little bit tumultuous just because I was one of the first fully disabled students to live on campus. Have I ever told you this?
Go ahead.
Oh, no. I'm honestly asking you, Jeremy.
Oh, yeah. I've heard it before, but of course our audience hasn't.
Okay.
And so I'm just as interested in how this narrative is going to develop as they are.
Okay. So, yeah. I feel like people need to be doing notes because I should have thought of a whole linear path for this. But at the end of high school, my parents were bound and determined for me to go to university, even though I wanted to take a year off. My mother's like, "If you take a year off, you're not going anywhere." She's like, you need to find somewhere to go. Actually going to Calgary, even though that for me was a dream for a long time. My mother was, just very dead set against that. Didn't end up getting initially into the U of C. Ended up getting into the U of L. But I had a doctor at the time that was like, he needs to go and live in the university, in the res. That would be good for you. My mom, just heartbroken, sick. And she's like, "No, he needs to go and live in a care facility. This is my baby. He doesn't know how to take care of himself." So here's me, first year university student. I'm the first fully wheelchair bound student that they've had in here. So first off, where they have me living is not wheelchair accessible. No, I don't. Now let me clarify what I mean by that. I mean, it wasn't wheelchair accessible by any means. The doorways weren't wide enough. I couldn't use any of I couldn't, because we were living in an apartment. I couldn't use any of the anything in the kitchen, and worst of all, I couldn't use the shower. So there was no way for me to even bathe. My new aide at the time had to take me over to the locker rooms to shower me.
By the pool?
Yeah.
Wow. For those of you that don't know the University of Lethbridge, it's built into this kind of bluff coulee, and it looks like just this concrete bunker, and the general residents are actually at the bottom of this bunker. It's like being in a dungeon, and I can't imagine how someone would negotiate that in a wheelchair. So you must have been in the apartment buildings that were at the top of the hill.
Yeah. I was at Pecani, and so had to do that until they started construction, and I wasn't in these alone. I had a roommate at the time. I'll just use his name because, I can't remember his last name. So we'll just try and that'll be a confidentiality of time, whereas we were both young at the time. I was 20. I had spent an extra year in high school, but he was 19. He was in the music program, Jesse, and he had never interacted with people with disabilities before. He had people with disabilities in the special class, but he had never actually interacted with them fully, like one-on-one. So here he is, and this is an individual of Caribbean descent. So he's first generation. For him, it was like, okay, I'm going into the music program. I'm going into teaching program. So he was doing a double major.
Faculty of Education.
Yeah, faculty of education. And here he is living with this disabled guy. They're ripping apart the apartment. He's got caregivers coming out left, right, and coming in twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. And I mean, now as you look around my apartment, I mean, it's a regular apartment. I mean, it's relatively clean. It should be for a guy, 34 years old. But at the time, I didn't know how to manage my apartment. I didn't know how to manage my caregivers. It's one thing to learn how to do your own laundry. It's another thing to tell somebody how to do it, and like all of the little details. So, I mean, poor Jesse. And I found out the preceding year that at the time too, he was also struggling with his sexuality too as well. So he and I, at many points, ended up coming to loggerheads.
Wow, that must have been not a comfortable experience.
Yeah, because we were fighting, and there was an issue with the bathroom. And he had left a note for my caregivers in 3 colors, blue, red, and black ink, about how, notes all over the bathroom about how he wanted them to clean. And he basically treated them, it's like, well, I have to deal with this disabled guy, but the staff will clean up after me too.
They're my servants.
Yes, thank you. They're my servants. Wow. So here's me, first year student. I'm like struggling with classes, trying to keep up with that, dealing with bad roommate, and then I've got my caregivers coming to me going, we're not cleaning up his crap. We're there for you.
It's funny you say that because it is the bathroom.
We'll clean up after you. We'll do dishes. We'll do whatever you say, but we're not fluffing and folding his pillows.
Exactly. They're not his servants.
Yeah. So and like that the first.
And something tells me that these were women that were coming into the residence as caregivers.
A lot of them were young women. Mm-hmm. There was. I had a few male caregivers. I had one male caregiver in particular. I can't remember his name at the moment, but there was one time when Jesse went on vacation. He went back to go and see his parents, and he loved listening to classical and Christian gospel music first thing in the morning, like to get himself up. And he had actually a playlist. And it would start off with Michael Bublé's Good Day or whatever it is, dun, 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 dun. And then eventually he would get up to that. He left it on when he left, and he locked his door, so the playlist kept playing for 2 days straight. And my one male caregiver was like, he's like, I want to go in, I want to kick down that door, and I'd rip out every single one of those wires. So yeah, suffice it to say that that first year wasn't good. I ended up living at the U of L after that for another 2 years, but I ended up living on my own. In fact, Jesse actually ended up moving out halfway through the year because, I can't take this anymore. And then I found out later that, he missed my company. Yeah, so then I ended up coming back here, ended up moving into this apartment and going into the social work program for the bachelor's degree, and that was that was an interesting program. It was a good program, but a vast majority of the students were people that had already done their diploma in social work, and a lot of the Learning Circles program was initially actually set up for that. So with a lot of those individuals, they had the grounding in it, and you only had, I think, myself and one other person that ended up quitting the program that was a university transfer student, because those were 2 ways to get into there. So the instructor, while the instructor would help me, the majority of the class was sort of geared towards people that already had those fundamentals. So for me, like when I went into the program, I ended up having, like, you know, again, sort of that analogy was kind of coming up where it's like, you know, I do the same thing they do. It just takes me twice as long because I was ending up having to do more study work to kind of get to where they were. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also this position around an emphasis around difference. Mm-hmm. That you know, all of these other people have this shared journey, and I don't. Mm-hmm. It's curious because in the undergraduate program I went through, then there was like 2 people with a diploma, and everybody else was university transfer. And so, you know, it's just interesting. But
yeah, bit of a flip flop there. Yeah, so I ended up getting my bachelor's degree, and you know,
one of the things I'm really curious about, actually.
Okay.
And because this is a little bit of a commentary, a look behind the curtain of our own profession, and that is to say, we're social workers are intended. One of our foundations is to create a just society, a society for all. Mm-hmm. And so I'm interested in knowing, like, what were some of the barriers that you had to deal with within this system that is training people to be, you know, those social justice advocates?
One thing I'll say, you know, like the professors were very accommodating. The schoolwork came very natural to me. I mean, you know, I was like a duck to water. Like I went from being like a, you know, B minus, maybe, you know, A minus student to getting A's and A pluses. So I'm like, okay, perfect program. All right. The one thing that kind of came to me was when, and I mean, I ran into the struggle too, with my master's degree. It was when you go out and you do the practicum, because having me in the classroom, everything was, you know, it's a controlled environment. Everything was set up. But when you take me out and do a practicum with me, it was very, very limiting because in a way, because with a lot of those jobs that you can do at the bachelor's level, and where a lot of people start out, you end up doing a lot of frontline work. Now, for those of you that, you know, don't know what frontline work is, a lot of that usually entails taking people out into the community and kind of getting that foundational experience. And with my practicums, even though, you know, my practicum supervisors were wonderful, they tried to give me the experiences that they could, that was something that I was always sort of lacking. Not because I didn't have the will to or the desire, but it was just all of sort of the physical barriers that kind of come up with that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Is that kind of exploring what you were thinking about?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like that position is around. Do we practice what we preach? You know. There's these innate barriers that are actually a part of even our social work culture and community too.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think just one second. I think that I didn't experience any overt or covert ableism in the program at all. I think that many people were quite accepting. I think that around, like I found for myself one thing, and I mean, maybe it's because I took this on very naturally, but I always felt like, you know, that I was speaking towards my experience as a person with a disability. Maybe that's because of course I was the only person in the program. So I don't know if that would be considered a barrier to the program, or I always felt like it was kind of welcome.
Yeah, no, the interesting thing there is, how come there aren't others? You know, doesn't that represent something?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. And when I actually went for my my graduation, there was one other person with cerebral palsy that did graduate from the social work program, but she had done it via Edmonton. But I think that is something to be said, is there are limited numbers of persons with disabilities that do end up getting degrees and kind of moving forward into sort of the work world because of all of the barriers that can kind of come with that. And I think, like, I was talking with a friend and last night, and she has a disability. She has spina bifida, but we talk about sort of the last two hurdles as people with physical disabilities to jump. One is dating, and the other one is working. Everything else, there's a smooth track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think now.
So I'm curious as well. Then, of course, you didn't end at the bachelor level. Well, what did the journey look like from there?
So from there, like after university, like after my bachelor's level, things, that was a weird period, man. Because, school, I think for a lot of us, like for a lot of people, like when you're in university, it's kind of that safe womb, and it's like, oh, I'm just going to like take school and school will go on forever. And that's like, whoa, wait. And, it's like, hang on, wait, I just reached the end of A New Hope. Literally, like, for me, like, that's what was going through my mind. Like,
I blew up the Death Star.
Yeah, I blew up.
Yay!
I blew up the Death Star. Well, no,
now what?
Yeah, no. Well, no. Well, I blew up the Death Star, but like when I got my diploma, all I could think of was that scene, like, where Princess Leia gives everybody a medal but Chewie.
Yeah. Was there music playing for you at the time? No music.
No music. But then it was like, okay, what do you do after that? And then it was like, oh, gotta get a job. Oh crap, what does that mean? And, I know a lot of people, oh yeah, university student, gotta get a job. Okay. But then it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, what can you do with a bachelor's degree in social work? I was going to say sociology there for a second, which is second love. But yeah, bachelor's degree in social work. Okay, no experience. Okay, well, first thing, you got to get registered. Okay, got my registration. All right, now go job hunting. I'm going down the list. Every single one for bachelor's degree, it's like, oh, and like minimal experience. It's like, okay, class 5 driver's license, need to work out in community. Nope. Okay, office job. It's like, okay, 5 years experience. Nope.
So this is where some barriers started to come into play. I mean, some barriers that would be common, but some barriers that were also specific.
Oh yeah, and actually, at the time, I had connected with a friend of mine, Mark, who he had done his diploma in social work, and he was a social worker out in BC, actually, I think on Vancouver Island. He had just moved back to Medicine Hat because he had gotten a job here, and then he ended up losing it, and he had become legally blind, and he was running into the same issue. He's like, you know what, great guy, and I should introduce you to him one day, because he can cook too. He's amazing.
You should introduce him to me then.
Yeah.
I'm always up for food.
yeah, and he was running into the same issue. He's like, I don't got a license anymore, man. What do I do? And then I was like, well, the only other thing I could think of is, all right, well, look at what are the other things that I could do? Well, okay, if I can't work at the bachelor's level, may as well go back and go up one more degree. So I contacted the U of C and contacted Linda, and she's like, yeah, no, you could definitely do it. She said, you need to get some volunteer hours. And I did. I will admit, I did work a little bit. I ended up working at CORE Association, which is an association here in Medicine Hat that mostly helps persons with developmental disabilities. And I also did end up working back at the Medicine Hat Youth Action Society, which has now changed its name the new name escapes me at the moment, but that was where I did my first practicum. So I did have a little bit of experience, but needed a little bit more before I got back. So I went and I did a lot of committee work, mostly focusing on persons with disabilities. Kind of bided my time for 2 years, took some extra courses, and then ended up going back doing my master's degree, thankfully, through the U of C online, doing some courses in Lethbridge, and then also too some courses, just here, basically in medicine at home here via Zoom. But then again, too, I also ran into, again, more issues kind of with having the practicum. And a lot of that came down to the fact that, I did well in the courses, but when you go out and you're doing things at a master's level and you get the practicum, they kind of expect you to have a little bit more experience and know-how than basically, fresh-faced social worker.
It's interesting you say that, because to a certain degree, that is that's true. It's just, Trent, I went back to back. I finished in April, and I started a master's degree in September. The only thing I had under my belt was the practicums, and then some work once again in with persons with developmental disabilities. That's all I had. And so some of the things, just as we've known each other, to me, it felt like an excuse. It felt like someone was saying, "Hey, we gotta say something here that is going to not be about your disability that ends this practicum," and that, I really saw as oppressive.
Maybe. Let me add a little bit more context to the discussion about practicum, because I think that, and I think I think you're right that there may have been something going on there, but I also think because you did your practicum through, directly at the U of C campus, is that correct?
No, the Calgary Counseling Center.
Oh, but you did that all within Calgary, is what I mean, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no.
But the placement and the school are not connected.
Okay.
Just like any other placement, it's just a place where there's a faculty liaison, someone that is willing to supervise you, just like any other placement.
Yeah.
So some of the people in my class were at different hospitals in the city and different other places with Alberta Health Services and so forth. Well, at the time, it would have been the Calgary Health Region. But.
Did you have to find that practicum, though?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So I was always under the impression that you were kind of assigned one.
No, so I had to go and say, "Hey, I see that that you're on the list of possible," and interview with them and. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they decided if they wanted to have me there or not.
Okay, wow. Okay, so you and I did have because I think that was for me one of the issues was to go out and find a practicum. I mean, a lot of people were very nice. They were very, very, nobody was overtly, they didn't say no, in terms of we don't, I mean, a lot of them said no, and then it was, I had to go back to the university basically saying, look, I can't find a practicum. And one person on there was, one person at the faculty was very nice and helped me find one at the college, but they basically wanted me to work independently, and I would go there and I would want more instruction and different things and kind of more guidance. And I mean I know you provide me quite a bit of guidance because as we've worked together in various things, but at that moment it was kind of they were that ended, and then their whole thing was you just need more experience working with people. And
why do you think I'm in a practicum? That's the thing, right? That's the point.
Yeah.
The point is when somebody accepts to be that mentor, that's what they're supposed to do, is be that mentor.
Yeah. And then I ended up getting another practicum, and that one was challenging just because the person at the time, and I'm purposely being vague just because these are my own personal experiences.
Sure, we don't want to throw anyone under the bus.
Yeah, and that person basically gave me like 1 or 2 weeks of it, like, or would show me to do something like maybe once or twice, or to do an intake of that required like 50 questions or 50 specific things that you go through with people, and she would then say, okay, go do that. And I remember I went to her specifically and I was like, hey, can I take one of these home, or can I have like a blank one that I can kind of go through and just kind of memorize and kind of work my own way through? Nope. No, you have to do it all with clients in the moment. And I mean, like, if you think about asking like 50 specific questions that can lead to different things, you kind of need you need to get your own rhythm down. And she very much wanted it like, or I felt at the time very much wanted it perfect right off the bat.
For sure. In fact, if it's cool, I want to flip this on its head a little bit.
Sure.
And that is to say, we talked about this fight that you had since the time you were born, except that nobody gets through this life alone. And you talked a little bit about some key people that were a part of that. You talked about your mom. You talked about some other people. You talked about Linda, which is very interesting because Linda was willing to drive from Lethbridge to Calgary for my defense.
Wow.
Right. And one of these other things that is this connecting piece, right? Between you and I. So what I'm wondering is, are there others that were part of your success?
Oh yeah. No, there was several others. There was, well, I mean, you're part of my story. I mean, you've been there for me in various capacities. I had, okay, gosh, this could end up being a 5-hour podcast if I honestly had to go through. So let me see, like going way back. I mean, of course, I have my parents, my brother. I had a lot of school aides. One of my first school aides, Lisa Carlos, who she actually trained as an Olympic figure skater. And she was my first school aide. She actually was with me from kindergarten. Well, from kindergarten all the way up till. You're getting old, man. I think grade 3, and like she would encourage me to do my own work. Then I had another school aide, which was not beneficial, because she kind of she had a lot, like she kind of trained me to be very dependent. And then I had my final school aide for my traditional education, like from elementary school to high school, Brenda Iwasik, or as I called her, the boss. And she was a wonderful woman that kind of helped me out when I was at a moment of dependence. Now, when I mean a moment of dependence, this lady that I had previously had basically trained me to basically not do anything on my own. So like if there was a pencil, like let's say right here where my phone is sitting, which I just tapped on, I would look at you, for example, and say, can you hand me that pencil, rather than literally just going and picking it up myself. Brenda wouldn't have any of that, and she basically had to take me right back to zero and basically teach me to be more independent with myself. And she took me from the learning assistance program in junior high in grade 7 all the way to the honor roll by the end of grade 9. And that woman was a true force of nature.
I see the smile on your face.
Yeah.
And I see this person.
Oh yeah.
Made such a tremendous difference in your life. And it's that.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that brought about such a tremendous change? It's not just somebody who has expectations. It's expectations and love.
Oh yeah. No, what she did, and I mean, and if I can do like get a little bit up on my political soapbox here, because she was a one-on-one aide, so she had the time to build the relationship with me, and she saw my limitations, but she did like very much like my mother. At the time, she saw my limitations not as wholly as who I was, but rather something that needed to be accommodated. And she saw something in me that could be pushed. And I think that that's something with people with disabilities that people are afraid to do. It's fine to push people to. It's almost like to emerge from a pupa emerging from a chrysalis. You have to have resistance in order to grow, and a good enough resistance, and to recognize that independence can be for anyone, can be a wide variety of things. What it means for me to be independent is completely different for you, or completely different with somebody with a developmental challenge. But no matter what it is, we all need that level of agency in our lives. That's what gives it meaning.
Agency and connection, which are interesting because it's kind of, if I could use a metaphor, it's kind of like someone that is climbing a rock face and there's no handhold. There's nowhere they could get their fingers to hook in. There's only one way to be able to do it, and that is with opposing force. I got to shove my hands in opposite directions against this to move myself up. And those opposite opposing positions would be that one being agency and the other connection.
For a second there, I thought you were going to talk about the logo of my private practice.
Oh yeah. Someone pulling someone up.
Yeah. Well, and so, yeah, and like that sort of relationship with Brenda, and with a lot of the other people in my life, because I've had a lot of people that have been helpful and a lot of people that have been hurtful. And the ones that I've noticed that have come into my life that have been the most helpful have been the ones that, again, foster that agency in people. And as you say, like, have that connection, because the one thing that I've noticed being a person with a disability and being so dependent on other people is that you need that desire. You so greatly need your community, and in some ways too, but at the same time too, you also have to be prepared for the loss of those connections or the change of them. And
you need to be not only something that is a position if I need the community, but the community needs me.
Exactly. Yeah. Like we all need a sense of worth. Like it brings me back to the idea of anomie, of purposelessness. Anomie is a French term, and it's used in sociology, and it's basically the idea of, especially you'll find this too, with the elderly as they age, especially within Western society, is that they lose their sense of identity. And what their sense of identity is, you'll find this it's more apparent with men than it is with women, because women have multiple roles and statuses that are enshrined within culture. But with men, particularly when a man loses like when he transitions out of work, he sort of loses that identity. Worth. Work.
What is my worth now? Yeah. If I don't contribute, what am I worth?
And
exactly.
So.
So I just kind of want to pull things together. I think have got this glimpse into your life, Trent, about what has developed this person that sits in front of me, and I'm wondering if you have kind of some concluding comments, some things that pull things together.
Well, one thing I'll say is, I think that what this was a cross section. I could probably sit here and talk for hours, but one thing that I think that I've noticed a lot about my life is that the need for patience with myself, patience with other people, and also not cutting yourself off from others, and finding people in your life or fostering relationships in your life that you can bring value to, and that bring value to you, and that is most important. And that even though a person may have a primary status of a disability, or or being a person of color, or maybe a certain sexual or gender identity, that may be a chapter in their lives, but that is one chapter. And to really understand them, it's about going beyond that primary status and looking at how all of those other things interconnect to make them who they are, and that people are constantly becoming who they are, that we're not just one thing, that we will constantly always change and grow if we so choose.
Thank you for that message, Trent. That is fantastic. So once again, to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of Humanizing Mental Health. This is Jeremy Alcorn.
This is Trent Nakers.
Signing off.
See you.
This podcast is intended as general information. We are glad that you joined us today. We hope this message has been as meaningful to you as it has been to us. If you're looking for help, you can find us on Facebook at Humanizing Mental Health or at humanizingmentalhealth.ca. Humanizing Mental Health is a plugged-in media production.